Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Executive Scrutiny Board, 5th of January 2026. Happy New Year to you all. I'm sure that 2026 is going to be just as busy, if not busier, than 2025 was. So look forward to working with you all until the municipal year, and we'll see how that goes as to the way we move forward. Do we have any apologies?
Chair, I've got Councillor Seal Wright, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, late items. I do have one. Just bear with me a second. It's logged me out. How about that? Right, yeah. So the leader has requested that further information be relayed to exec in regard to Housing General Fund Capital Programme, which is the roof replacement and essential associated works. And I've agreed to waiver that to have an addendum regarding this in private session, which will be item 14. And that item is in item 13. So I just needed to mention that as a late item. Petitions, that's Council Cabinet, Exec. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any? Councillor Bolton.
Just to be transparent and open, Chair, item 9 refers to various send and alternative provision. The St Ralph Sherwin Trust is mentioned on page 4. I am a governor within the trust. I just wanted to let everybody know that. I don't know that I need to officially declare it, but I feel better now I have.
No problem. That's the Cabinet agenda, isn't it? Item 9. Yeah, thank you. Minutes of the meetings held on December the 1st and the 15th of December are finally attached. There was some discussion last time. As you can see, if there's any notes on that, are we okay to agree those? Yeah. Okay, moving forward to item 5, which is the forward plan, something that we look at every meeting. We do have the ability, if we wish to ask for further information and to have items of the forward plan brought for further scrutiny by this board. If there's anything that you feel that should happen, give us a shout, and we will endeavour to ask the cabinet member to join us. But if not, we'll move on to overview and scrutiny forward plan. Now, I've said before, I'm actually meeting the chairs of overview and scrutiny periodically to discuss their work programmes and just discuss overview and scrutiny in general. Some really positive discussions there as well. We do, again, have the ability, if we wish to refer items or topics to the overview and scrutiny boards. I would probably suggest that as we're sort of heading now in towards municipal year end, that we let them continue their work, and then maybe we can have a think about whoever's chair of this meeting and members of this exec, maybe putting forward some suggestions for the next municipal year for the overview and scrutiny. Maybe that's the way forward. Okay. Okay, right. Council Cabinet responses to scrutiny recommendations. I have seen these, and I think it was a mixed bag, but several were agreed, and I think a couple were rejected. I'm not quite sure on the actual number. It's in the minutes. But yes, there were some positive recommendations agreed by Cabinet from ourselves, so that's a good thing. Okay, we'll move on to item 8, which is Council Cabinet Agenda. And I'll grab that one. We have decisions. Okay, item 8, so it's relocation and refurbishment of Bonsall View short break service for younger adults and with learning disabilities. Gamal, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Gamal is a Director for Commissioning. Chair, in terms of the key points of this report, and certainly an exciting report, is this is an exciting opportunity to relocate and future-proof the Council's short break service, currently at Bonsall View, which is for younger adults, 18 to 64-year-olds with learning disabilities and complex care needs and support needs. Bonsall provides an essential council service to support unpaid carers to take a break from their caring responsibilities, mitigating risk of carer breakdown whilst ensuring their caring responsibilities, mitigating sort of breakdown and ensuring that their cared for family members are being looked after and supported. Relocating the service to a repurposed sustainable facility supports the Council's prioritisation of adult social care and certainly adults with complex needs, allowing much more enhanced short break service. And Chair, the Council has prioritised £2.6 million capital funding to relocate the service to the former Morliston Adult Day Centre on the same site, and that will provide a much more sustainable setting. Bonsall's view is currently on the same campus, based in a former Arboretum House care home there. So certainly an exciting project with that. Once Bonsall relocates, then the Arboretum House will become vacant, and the Council will consider the opportunities of repurposing that, and certainly there is significant interest, as the report outlines, from Derbyshire Community Healthcare Services to deliver their short-term assessment beds, and those discussions are continuing. That's a valuable community first service currently situated at Perth House, which could relocate to a vacant Arboretum House, and that service provides occupational therapy, physiotherapy to support people to maximise independence and return home from hospital. And Chair, should the service be relocated, Perth House will become vacant, and future use of Perth House and the surrounding site will be subject to a future Cabinet report with full details outlining options, a range of options, including temporary accommodation or housing. So, Chair, the four recommendations are outlined there, but the main purpose of this report is about investment in an adult social care short break facility and a capital project to refurbish a particular area at Morliston to take that project forward. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I found this report a little bit confusing. Perhaps it's just me getting back into the council mode. Strangely enough, I was contacted by a constituent last month regarding a personal issue, in that one of his family were wanting to relocate from hospital, and the hospital were going to release the person to go to Perth House. My constituent contacted Perth House and was spoken to by a member of staff saying that Perth House is going to be closing. Now, when I read this report, I thought, well, this sort of clicked into some casework, hence me explaining to it now. But my concern is for the staff. If the staff are saying that to a member of the public, what's happening to the staff who work on these existing locations? Clearly, we've got a duty, care, and to communicate with our staff. So my question to Gamal is really under 4.7. It mentions the Perth House building, and once it's determined, then another report. But at the time of writing this report, obviously prior to Christmas, it was still undecided. So my point is, I agree with being sensible in our buildings and making them beneficial for the people who we want to serve. But clearly, we need to understand the people, our staff who are working there need to know what's going to be happening with their jobs.
Gamal, can we have any information on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's a very good question there. So just for assurance for scrutiny, we've been liaising very closely with the health services and including the manager and head of service for the Perth facility, Community First, and now I've certainly seen communication that's been sort of sent to staff and continues to be sent to advise all staff at Perth that you know, there is no decisions and there's no impact on jobs as such, and actually there's no decision as yet in terms of a relocation, but it is an option that the health service and the council are working on. And Chair, I will continue to make sure that comms keeps going through. So it is a complicated report because you've got a number of different assets issues, adult social care facility, but I appreciate the comment being made by Councillor Bolton, and we will re-echo and resend the comms to make sure that there's no ambiguity for service users or staff operating from Perth.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Bolton? Councillor Bonser.
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick question. The service that's provided at Bonsall View at present, how many residents can be taken in there, and how many can be taken at Morliston, and what's the benefit of moving it from one place to another? Could you not just spend the money, for example, on Bonsall View? You know, there's like a domino effect happening here, isn't there? One place is moving to another place, and they're moving on to somewhere else, and eventually somewhere's going to become vacant. But what is the rationale and the benefit of moving?
Thank you, Chair. The rationale for it is that the relocation of a former Bonsall View, which was based elsewhere, was temporarily relocated, although it be a number of years, to Arboretum House, which isn't really a facility for long-term. The size of it isn't suitable for that. So this is about actually creating a sort of purpose refurbished 7-bedroomed short breaks accommodation at the Morliston Day Centre. So in effect, a decision would have to be made around putting the short break service in a much more appropriate accommodation, because Arboretum House, where Bonsall View currently isn't an ideal situation at all.
Councillor Kerr.
Thank you. I think this is a sensible reorganisation and consolidation, except insofar as the name that's being given to this, in that the Bonsall View got its name from a previous location. And I actually find it quite confusing to be referring to Bonsall View as a service, which isn't delivered from Bonsall View or something called Bonsall View, when it does have that historic geographic location. So maybe we could, as part of this reuse, we could rename it and give it a name that is actually related to the service provision or its current location rather than the historic one. My other concern is point 2.3, which is seeking approval to dispose of the site to the NHS if that is what is wanted. And I feel that, was it it's 2.4? Yes. Anyway, I don't think we should be at this point, or Cabinet shouldn't be at this point, deciding to dispose of a site or giving permission to dispose of a site when it's not clear that the NHS is actually going to continue this service, and if so, whether that location is going to be where it wishes to use. Not just because it takes away control from Cabinet, but also it would lose control of that land. The council spends quite a lot of effort in consolidating parcels of land through CPO, and this seems to be doing the opposite, and that doesn't seem to me to be a good way of progressing, particularly as these are low buildings and they have the potential for building above them. It's city centre, close to city centre land, and to be able to build a third or fourth storey or even a fifth storey above there, which could be housing at a time when we are in desperate need of housing, it seems to be, we don't seem to have considered all the options. And I'm thinking, Chair, about the sort of scheme that I've mentioned to you and I've mentioned in other meetings before, where you can build prefabricated buildings on stilts, and you could build over an area like this. I've taken advice, and it's suggested that there could be as many as 40 or so properties built on that footprint of those two together, without any impact on the existing uses. And I don't think we should be letting go of something like that when we know there is such a housing need within the city. So I would suggest that if other people agree with that, then we put forward a recommendation to Cabinet to suggest that they don't approve at this point the sale of that land. If it wants to be a long-term lease, that would be fine. But I think we should retain the freehold.
Okay, if you want to work up that wording and put it forward for a seconder. So 2 points, that one, and obviously it's slightly outside, well, it is outside of your portfolio, isn't it, really, because it's probably straining more into regeneration, capital expenditure, that kind of thing. Naming was the first question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Kerr. I think historically, Bonserview is a name that seems to go back a number of years, and therefore it adds to confusion. And I think this is an opportunity to rename and come up with an appropriate name for the short break facility. Absolutely agree with that. And Chair, in terms of future use of any vacant building, then of course that's a decision for yourself to take. The only point I would make is there are opportunities, but the business case needs to be developed in more detail around future sales and disposal. But a campus with adult short breaks facility based on there, and then an arboretum with Perth, there are advantages within that opportunity if that did come together from health in terms of that health connection and hospital discharge and adult social care, short breaks facilities, but equally understand what the consideration the council would take before taking its final decision on disposing of any asset, albeit in this case it could be Arboretum House or Perth as part of that business case rationale decision making. But as I say, the main purpose of this report has been in relation to improving the adult social care short break facility, and albeit the conversation and discussions that health are interested but haven't taken a formal decision, but there are synergies within that, and that will form the basis of a future report should Cabinet agree to the recommendations outlined here.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr, I don't think you were suggesting that necessarily the core use should change. You were just, I'm assuming you were asking for consideration of extra value of the actual site. Yeah, right, okay. Do you have some wording for that to put forward for a seconder?
Sorry, yes, I do, Chair. We could say we ask that Cabinet do not release the site for sale, or if they do, to at least retain freehold control over the land at Arboretum House to enable this wider site to be available for possible repurposing over in the future. This could include provision of housing above the existing 1- and 2-storey properties in this close to city centre location.
That's quite specific, but maybe...
It could include. It's not
okay.
very specific.
All right. Do you want to ask for a seconder for that one?
Do I have a seconder?
I'll humour Councillor Kerr. I'll second you, but I would suggest that it's softened in slightly, because being very specific, it should be...
We can lose the second sentence if you prefer, Chair.
I think so, and that would at
Just
least...
to available for possible repurposing over a wider area in the future.
That's fine, yeah. Okay, if you can ping that over on email, that'd be great. Well, I'm seconding it. Are we all agreed? I haven't taken a vote, sorry. Are we okay with that? We'll have to see, yeah, we'll see what Cabinet thinks of it. They'll probably note it, but I'm not preempting what they're going to say, but there we go. Any other questions? Councillor Wright.
Yeah, it's more of a comment, really. I found this paper, fairly compelling on a first reading, but when thinking about what we've been asked for, about how we scrutinise, the two issues that raised their heads to me were, how do we know this is the best investment of money? Bear in mind, every service, public service that we deal with, it's called an essential service here, and I can understand from the legislation how that's been determined, but you look across just about every other element we deliver, and it's essential services. So on the face of it, the things that I find lacking is, how do we compare, for example, with our comparator authorities in terms of what we invest in this? Is this the best way of providing that respite care? It's the only option that's provided in the paper. There are other ways of providing respite care. So what I'm struggling with, the context, bearing in mind that, you know, we're going to be in a budget soon where we're going to have to make prioritise. And when you actually look at, you know, and I've got a lot of sympathy having, you know, dealt with a lot of families that are dealing with children with special educational needs. So it's the context really, and you know, this is feedback's in light in that feedback of our scrutiny. I think all too often we're not given sufficient information on which to scrutinise, and we're very always looking at little slices of service delivery without looking at the broader context. And that would be part of my feedback. And I personally would rather have seen this go to Adult and Health Scrutiny Board first, either first or in its entirety, where I would imagine that there's people who've got a greater understanding and in-depth knowledge of this area, and it would provide that greater level of scrutiny. So, you know, I think there's been a lot of valuable comments made already in this, and for me, that extra level of scrutiny providing the broader context is something we ought to be requesting as part of the review to provide it in these, because, you know, often we get papers, my point is, that are very compelling when you look at that very small slice of service delivery, but, you know, how do we compare against this, you know, the Prestons or Southamptons that we, you know, how do they deliver this service? Are we providing the best way? Those sort of questions I think we should be asking as part of our scrutiny.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr, just press your button because I think mine's on. There we go. So I think you're right, and I think, can we just ask what's the pathway been from OS to here? Because obviously we deal with fairly immediate decision that the Cabinet are going to consider within 48 hours of this meeting. So obviously it's fairly late in the day. We get the detail, but the detail there of the discussion about what possible options there might be and how it all fits together, has there been a pathway with that via the relevant overview and scrutiny?
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. So it's been almost 2 years in the making. So the Adult Social Care and Continuous Improvement Board has been looking at this along with other aspects of improvements on our adult social care journey in relation to that. So that's been the process so far. And I do hear, Chair, condemn the comments being made, and they're absolutely valid in the sense of what amount of detail do we put into the reports. So as the report does outline, albeit at a high level, that all councils in line with the Care Act 2014 have a duty to provide a short break service, so we're legally required to provide a service as a council. And Chair, for information, when comparing Derby's short break service to certainly 4 other local authority short break services, this is probably mid-lower end of that respite service that's provided. Other councils, certainly 4 that I've seen information on, have been a lot more significant. So this is the first step towards us providing a fit and appropriate short break service with investment after some significant time. And Chair, it is a vital service in the sense that it provides almost over 1,000 night short break service for adult social care, sort of cared for people within that, and the aim is to increase that to help in terms of kind of people cared for at home, but allowing that respite provision. So I appreciate we could have included a lot more information, but there has been a journey to develop this over a long period of time in relation to our only kind of short break service that we as a council operate within that, and investment as part of our adult social care improvement journey.
Thanks, Chair. So this is our continued journey of developing the appropriate sufficiency within our school system for children with additional needs. And in particular, we've come to talk to you today about the recommendation to Cabinet to commence a scheme at Ivy House Special School and to add that scheme to the 25, 26, 26, 27 Schools Capital Programme. That's to extend, develop a new part of the school by converting an existing building with the potential of increasing the number of places by a further 26. Ivy House, I'm sure all councillors are aware, provides an exceptional service for children and young people, and all through provision for children and young people with profound and multiple learning needs as well as severe learning needs. We have a sufficiency gap for severe learning needs, and so this will certainly add to the portfolio or the local offer for parents within the city. In part, that expansion has come about because of the decision by 2 other trusts not to pursue a potential expansion of St Giles onto within a different trust school, so as a bit of a satellite. And in some respects, we absolutely agreed with both trusts that it would be more fitting to move to a specific development. If, of course, we're offered any additional funding coming down the line in April from the Send Capital Programme, we'll look at further expansion of St Giles, if that's possible within the St Giles site. But at the moment, we have no proposal to undertake that programme of work. So whilst we're looking at an expansion of, or an investment of 1.7 million at Ivy House, we're also looking to withdraw the current allocation that's within the Send Capital Programme plan for St Giles. The third part of this report talks to the intent that St Ralph Sherwin's Trust has identified to us to change the enhanced resource provision for those with visual impairment and physical disability at St Benedict's Catholic Voluntary Aid Academy, as outlined in section 4 of the report. In summary, this has come about because of 2 things, really. Firstly, the increasing number of parents and young people who wish to be educated within a mainstream provision, and it's been identified that they don't particularly need that additional enhanced resource provision. And as such, the numbers of children and young people, numbers of young people attending the school as part of the enhanced resource provision has reduced. What that means is that it's no longer financially viable to deliver an enhanced resource provision with low numbers, given the costs associated with a qualified visually impaired teacher or a qualified teacher of visually impaired students. They are also very scarce to come about, so their market rates are exceptionally high. But what it has meant is that there's a closer alignment with the work of the local authority's visual impairment team of advisory teachers, who will now be much more engaged with St Benedict's in providing that additional support as required for those youngsters with visual impairment. There are very few with physical disabilities that are attending the school, and we would apply through an education, health and care plan relevant occupational therapists to ensure, and physiotherapists to ensure that the mainstream provision is has taken the reasonable adjustments and necessary steps to meet needs. So there are 3 parts to this programme, Chair. 1, to note the removal of St Giles from the capital programme. 2, for the recommendation of the Ivy House allocation of 1.7 million. And 3, to note the intent of St Benedict's to withdraw their enhanced resource provision.
Thank you. Could I just ask a broad question? I think we've seen a great deal of work over some time now on this area of provision, which is welcome. In terms of our local offer, and this is probably a very difficult question, so you may not be able to answer it, but How do we broadly compare to a comparable local authority in terms of the provision that we currently have or have got in the pipeline? Is that something which you're aware of broadly?
Yes, Chair. So we're actually doing really well. The intent and support that's been put into place over the last few years has really made a difference. So if we compare to Derbyshire, for example, we are ahead of the curve, as we are in a lot of other places. We've really adopted the strategy over the last 2 years has been very much about building the support within mainstream provision, because that, as we know, from the Warnock report all the way through to more recent reports, is the best place for children to engage and also achieve good outcomes. And that's the key. We want our schools there to support children to achieve good outcomes. So we're actually doing exceptionally well. Our provision within primary school is better than our secondary in terms of enhanced resource provisions, and our intent is to move forward with those secondary schemes this calendar year. And our special school provision is exceptional as well. We've got a broad spectrum of provision. Because of the developments over the last 2 years, there's been fewer children going out of the local authority and into independent schools as parents now choose to stay locally, which is exceptional. We've got 73% of our children on new plans request to stay within the local offer. Previously, we were quite low. We're about 37% of the entire population with SEND in the local offer. That's going up now towards 50%. We're just waiting for this. We have a review every year, every calendar year, and we'll get that review within the next 3 weeks of exactly what's our numbers now in the local offer. But given the fact that the all new plans, children are wanting to stay, or parents are wanting to keep their children locally, we expect to now increase that number and get closer to the national average. We were significantly below the national average. Our target would be for upper 50% in total of the school population with SEND being in the local offer. As I mentioned before, 2 years ago when I joined the local authority, it was around 37%. So we had a long way to go, but we're moving in the right direction.
And one further question from me. We talk about secondary schools then.
Yeah.
Notoriously hard to provide when we get housing growth. Primary schools, obviously cheaper, tend to be able to be delivered via developer contributions in most cases. When you see a large development, it tends to focus on primary education rather than secondary, which is a lot harder, as I say, to sort of put together. Is that a hindrance? Or I mean, what do we think? How are we going to try and provide the increased secondary provision? Is there discussions in that area?
Yes, we work very closely with our secondary schools, and we already have enhanced resource provision, for example, in Benrose, which works exceptionally well. The new school inspection framework is really quite clear in its expectations for schools to be inclusive and to provide relevant provision for youngsters with special educational needs. So we do, and we've seen a real close, well, certainly in the close work that I've been engaged in, more and more secondary schools are exploring how they can do that and how they provide that as a standard provision for all children, but also through enhanced resource provisions. So we have a good relationship. It's really collaborative. I personally haven't seen this level of collaboration anywhere else. It's quite outstanding. So I don't feel there'll be a problem about moving forward. We've got one secondary school providing a sixth form offer that is a vocational programme. We have special schools. Our special schools obviously are very much engaged in the conversation and offer up to aged 18 as well. So there is a really good offer here, and I'm not finding any problems at all with our secondary provision.
So I suppose to answer my question then, it's not necessarily the need to have additional secondary schools in the area. It's a case of there is work ongoing to provide via the current secondary schools that we have in our region then. Is that pretty much what it is?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I didn't answer fully your question, so thank you for the prompt. Where we have housing expansions, we will need additional secondary provision. There will be an expectation that SEND will feature as part of that build profile. In terms of our need for specialist provision, there will need to be expansion for the secondary phase. The challenge that we have at the moment is SEND capital, which is very limited. We've allocated or identified spend, a significant amount of spend, and we're approximately 5 million left to spend from the pot of funding that we have. So therefore, what's going to be really important is how that translates within the local plan, and whether or not Section 106 or SIL might explore the opportunities for that additional. But the ideal would be mainstream provision with additional support within any new school. It's interesting to note that there has been a reduction in the number of free schools that have been that were intended to be commissioned, because the intent is to ensure as many children as possible can attend their local provision. But if there is a need for a new special school, there will be an approach for free school presumptions or other mechanisms that we can go to the DFE in delivering if it's not within the local plan or emphasised within the local plan, supplementary guidance.
Thank you. Councillor Bonser.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments first. Very much welcome the expansion there at Ivy House. It's a fantastic provision for children in the city with those severe needs. So I think that's really important. And it would be good to see extra provision at St Giles if that is possible, if that can come on board, back on board. That would be great. In terms of the loss of the enhanced resource at St Benedict's and the support for visually impaired, I seem to remember that we have recently looked at the loss of that specialist service at Mark Eaton. Am I right in saying that? For the primary sector. So are we satisfied that we have adequate support and provision for children with visual impairment in the city? I suppose is my question.
Sharon?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, whilst we are not the final arbiters of the decision around this enhanced resource provision, because it's a trust and that will be the decision of the Department for Education, we do have to give our view as to whether or not we feel that needs can be met locally. In the same way as we have a visually impaired team, we have a hearing impaired team that offers the support for children and young people where there is additional needs that we can't meet, and bearing in mind visual and hearing impairment are the two statutory impairments that we really do need to meet the needs of, then we would need to look to expand the relevant teams to offer that support. So we're keeping abreast of that constantly.
Councillor Bonser, I sense that you're worried about loss of provision and it's not being replaced. Is that the area?
Well, yes, that was my concern. If we haven't got the support, the direct support there in terms of enhanced resource in primary, we now probably haven't got it in secondary. I suppose, without being too political, this is typical of the academy system, isn't it? That they choose whether they want to be in or out of this, and ultimately the cost comes back on the authority. The requirement to provide that service and that support comes back to the authority as a central cost. So, yeah, it's a shame.
And that's why Sharon and the team are working so hard. Okay, Councillor Kerr.
Can I just pick up initially that comment about the visually impairment? I know a young woman who is now just now in her mid-20s, and she has a severe sight impairment. She actually ended up going outside the city for her secondary education. But the other side of this is that she had very supportive parents who took it upon themselves to learn what it meant to have a child who was disabled in that way. And not all parents will have the time or the capacity to do that. And I'm just wondering whether we might be losing something in terms of the family support for a child who has a severe sight impairment, and whether we've fully explored that. And if we haven't, that needs exploring alongside this change, whether there's some way we can make sure that we do that. That's my first point, Chair. I'll come back to the second one.
Jan?
So the school isn't responsible for providing the support for the family or developing the skills of the family to meet the needs of their children. That's provided by a number of other areas of provision. So our visually impaired team will work as soon as we've got notification of a child with visual impairment. There is a family visit and there's some work undertaken to understand that. And of course, there is a close alignment with the health provision. So we're quite unique, actually, and that we've got two joint pieces of work, both with hearing impairment and visual impairment, clinical as well as educational staff, that work with families beforehand and in an ongoing way. If a child is attending a school with a specialism either in hearing or visual, then there's an opportunity for local authorities staff to step back, but they never fall off a caseload. They're always there, and there is always a check-in to make sure things are going. So if you think about an onion, there's a core group that need intensive support, and then it radiates out. And unlike an onion, it's quite dynamic, so children move across. But yes, we're quite lucky in the collaborative work that we do with health.
Can I, with that, Chair, can I just check that includes enabling families to get to know each other so that they can provide peer-on-peer support?
So that's not the responsibility, that's not part of something that we do at the moment. However, it is met within the family hubs. So there's opportunities through the family hubs to have that parent-to-parent support programme.
Chair, what I was, before we had that conversation, which Councillor Bonds has started, I was going to welcome this because I really appreciate the trend towards mainstream education, because it's not just showing positive results for the young people who need that help, but also it means that the other young people are growing up with a much greater awareness of the reasonable adjustments that some of their peers need. And I think that's really helpful in the adult world, so that people don't think it's funny or difficult or exceptional to be somebody who needs additional help. And the more we do that, I think the easier it'll be for society to treat everybody equitably. So I appreciate the trend. But my concern is that we've had the strategy that went through, and it's probably 2-3 years ago now, isn't it, as to how we were going to achieve this. And this report shows that we've got a couple of things here that haven't actually gone to plan. Do we need to review that plan? Is it being automatically reviewed every 6 months, every 12 months, although we're not seeing it come back here? Or does it need a review now?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we're just undertaking a new sufficiency review based on the details of those children who are in mainstream. Parents want to be in mainstream more, our needs for specialist provision, and for those children who are in mainstream that actually should and could be better supported in specialists. So we're undertaking the sufficiency at the moment. That'll help us understand where we're going with the remaining 5 million and anything else that comes down the line in April, when we expect our capital settlement to come through. Or to be finalised. I'm sorry, I've just thought, Chair, we had it the last week of December, so I've not factored that in, but it isn't a great amount. So we will need to understand exactly what our needs are in order to allocate the funding effectively, and we will bring that back through, and to children and young people scrutiny.
Thank you. Any other questions, queries? I think we can recommend to welcome the report. I have a seconder for that. Councillor Kerr, thank you. Okay, thank you. Moving on then. Item 10, which is maintain school term dates 2027 to 2030.
That's me again, Chair. I don't know if anybody remembers, but in 2024 we brought a term date consultation that had been undertaken. We only did it for 2 years at that particular point. However, we were not aware at that point either that LGR would be on the table. So timing actually was quite fortuitous in some respects. The intention was for us to come back to Cabinet with potentially a different approach to term dates, because there's been a number of academies that have trialled different approaches to term dates over the last few years, particularly in relation to improving attendance and, as a consequence, improving outcomes. However, we haven't had the evidence as yet to support that there would be any significant difference. Therefore, the recommendation that we would want to present to Cabinet is to continue reflecting and mirroring the Derbyshire term dates, primarily because of the significant number of staff and parents who voted previously, or in the last consultation, to mirror the Derbyshire model. And given the fact that we are moving towards LGR, we don't know what that looks like at the moment, but second-guessing the potential of two, or certainly the engagement with Derbyshire more, for us it does make sense to continue to reflect the Derbyshire term dates. However, whilst we can make a recommendation, and we can actually say we don't have to go back out to consultation, because we recently had a consultation and it was reasonably demonstrated that there were sufficient numbers requesting a mirroring of Derbyshire. We really should ask for representation if there's any representation against our decision. So rather than going straight out for a full consultation, what we're recommending to Cabinet is that there will be, that we continue to reflect Derbyshire's position. Once LGR is underway, we then look to consult fully on what that new model might look like. However, we must stipulate that good practice would suggest we ask for representation in a form of consultation, but it's not officially a consultation, if you see what I mean.
Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think this, in the current context, this seems a sensible way forward. We know that there are a number of parents who have children attending schools across the county and city boundary, and with the advent of local government reorganisation not very far away, it perhaps not the right time to sort of make radical changes to our policies, but I think it is a good point to make to continue looking at the evidence in terms of improving attendance and improving outcomes, and if there are different models that will assist with that, then it's important to build up that evidence base for the new authority to perhaps consider again when they're looking at their term dates for the first time. So I'd welcome this, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, it's absolutely vital. It all aligns, along with lots of other things, but obviously parents and families need to be confident as to when they can book the holidays and have time off, childcare and all those other things. So yeah, I think it's a sensible approach, Councillor Rawson. Councillor Bonser.
Just a quick one. I mean, it's probably obvious, but have Derbyshire actually set their dates? So do we know that we're definitely mirroring their dates? And once they're set, are they cast in stone? Or, you know, if something emerges, are we able to change them at a future date?
That's a good point, because I think because they tend to be set quite a few years in advance, they tend to be set in stone, but I might be wrong.
Yes, they are. As soon as Cabinet approves the set of term dates, and their term dates are set to 2030, which is quite a way in the distance, we would look to consult. You can consult annually. That's really disruptive. 2 years is the minimum, which is what we adopted. So hence us going out for a proper consultation post-LGR, so we understand where we could go. And at that point, we could change.
Okay, Councillor Eyre.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think this seems a fundamentally sensible approach in the way that we're looking to progress this. Just around the sort of the alternate argument in terms of not mirroring Derbyshire, and obviously looking at the percentages that have come in, it's around sort of 20% sometimes and around 13% others in terms of whether we should. What are the main arguments for not mirroring Derbyshire?
So the main arguments for me is that there is evidence of schools within the city that don't follow or their academy trusts that don't mirror, and indeed a foundation school also that doesn't mirror the LA maintained term dates and the Derbyshire term dates. And those schools have seen an improvement in an issue around attendance. Because what tends to happen is that school term starts earlier. There's a 2-week break rather than a 1-week break in the October half term. But when it comes to the Easter half term, there's less time taken. So the time that the weeks of the holidays times are split differently over the period. Why does that impact? One of the problems that we have around attendance is that parents take their children out of school before the holiday because it's cheaper. So then there's a way in which parents can then attempt to circumvent the hiking of rates of travel companies by enabling them to take the dates. By shortening the spring term and summer term, extending the spring and summer term, what you're doing is providing a greater amount of time for children to prepare for their exams. So that's the reason why it's worked well in other parts of the country and indeed within schools within Derby. But we've not really had the time to fully commit to exploration, research, discussions, so that parents have a better understanding of that. And given the fact that we are, at the moment, surrounded by Derbyshire, there are a lot of parents whose children attend schools in Derbyshire and schools in Derby City. So for them, the coterminosity is more sensible.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, queries, comments? No? Okay. We'll move on then. Item 11, which is council tax base for 26-27. You, Pete, have you got a working microphone?
Got one working now, yeah.
Yeah, just shift across.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the council tax base report for 26-27, which seeks to approve and recommend to full council the council tax base. Agreeing the council tax base is the first step in the process of setting the council tax to be collected in 26-27, and of course is an essential part of the 26-27 MTFP process. Once the council tax base is agreed, the tax must be notified to the Police and Crime Commissioner for Derbyshire and Derbyshire Fire and Rescue Authority for them to be able to set their precept for the coming financial year. The council tax base has gone up by about 686 properties for 26-27, and Appendix 1 is a detailed calculation of how the tax base has been arrived at. That's pretty much it, really. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. It's a standard process, isn't it? We see this part of the whole process. I mean, it is interesting. So I'd wager that this process in some other local authorities nearby probably see a significant increase due to housing growth, which we see as an impact, but not necessarily within the city boundary. So it's always been a bugbear of mine. I know I've had various debates with Councillor Rawson over the years about council tax revenue and how we're kind of restrained really in terms of the footprint. So we'll see again how LGR opens that up potentially in the future. It will make a huge difference, and I'm sure the report that we see in 2 or 3 years' time will look very different to this one in terms of the increase. Okay, but are there any questions, queries, comments? That's pretty straightforward, thank you very much. Okay, moving straight on then to Mazza, item 12, Housing Revenue Account Business Plan 26 to 2055. That's my retirement, I think. That well past it.
Unfortunately, it's a statutory requirement. We've got to do a balanced 30-year business plan for the HRA. The HRA is a ring-fenced account that is again statutory specifically specifies the income and expenditure that can be allocated to the HRA. The plan itself is a long-term 30-year plan that evaluates the affordability of the investment across that 30-year period for the management and maintenance of the existing stock, the investment in the existing stock, and also the investment in acquisitions and new builds. And as you can imagine, housing stock lasts considerably longer than 30 years, so you really do need to plan for the 30, hence the 30-year business plan. This report specifically asks for 5 recommendations to be approved. Firstly, the approval of the 30-year business plan as a balanced plan. Secondly, the major components is the changes in the rent and service charges. Thirdly, the capital programme over the next 3 years in the acquisitions, new builds, but also the planned maintenance of the existing stock and working with Derby Homes to fulfil that work programme. Approve the management and maintenance fee to Derby Homes as specified in the terms within the agreed partnership agreement. And finally, approval for rent convergence subject to it being announced by 31st of January. And to give you a bit more detail, the top left-hand table specifies the assumptions within the HRA business plan. We're regulated by the Regulator of Social Housing and its rent standard, which specifies for the next 10 years we can increase our rents by CPI plus 1%. For 26-27, CPI plus 1% equates to 4.8%, and it takes the previous September's CPI and adds 1%, hence the 4.8. We have then assumed that the inflation would align with government target by 28-29, which is 2%. And from that point onwards, it is, it's from 36-37 beyond to the end of the 30 years, it's government target plus 0.5%. The table on the left, bottom left, is the changes in the service charges. So if you have a look at the pink highlighted areas, service charges are aligned with the CPI, which is 3.8% in the main, with the exception of the yellow table, which is utilities, ground maintenance, cleaning, and also the final one, which is the furniture pack. The furniture pack is proposed to be frozen. Utilities to be increased by £3 per week, but that's only a small selection of tenants where utilities are communal in flats, for example. Grounds maintenance and cleaning to be increased by £1 per week. And the reason those are different to CPI is because all of those are currently being subsidised by the wider HRA, because we're not recovering all of the costs as it stands. And the reason utilities is £3, we didn't purposefully increase utilities when they increased significantly during the COVID period, and we're trying to catch up now. The top right table shows in purple the revenue position of the HRA plan in 26-27. The rental income in the main plus the service charges comes to £77 million. That's showing a small surplus, and I'll explain how the surplus impacts on over the 30 years. And obviously surplus goes into the reserve, and any deficit in future years come out of the reserve. Bottom right table, the capital, 26-27, which is the yellow, the blue highlighted area, shows that we are investing 52 million in existing stock, but also new homes and acquisitions. And the majority of that is coming from borrowing, which is about 25 million in that year. And what we're expecting is in 27-28 to have an additional 88 new homes. Over the 30-year plan, the bottom new homes completed, on average over the 30 years we're expecting 100 homes per year across the 30 years. This slide is showing the payments to Derby Homes for managing and maintaining the existing stock. And again, the management maintenance fee is set within the partnership agreement. We have specifically included in this year and the following 2 years an agreement with Derby Homes to make some efficiency savings within the management fee aspect of it. In 26-27, we're expecting a efficiency saving of 365, and over the 3 years that should equate to £1 million. And the reason we've done that is right at the bottom. If you have a look, the recommended minimum reserve balance, it needs to be about 8 million, which is about £650 per property. And it equates to 8 million, and to achieve that 8 million, we're having to make efficiency savings. This slide shows you the actual position of the council rent against the market. First line council rent, which is based on an average in 26-27, as in after the 4.8% increase, we're expecting the average rent to be £104, and that's on average just over 2 bedrooms per unit. And if you compare that to the market is £184 for a 2-bedroom unit. Comparatively, the council rents are 57% of market, so significantly cheaper, and that's continuously been vocalised by within the consultation, that all tenants are happy with where we are in terms of the quality and the affordability of the rent as compared to the market itself. The purple box is showing how the council rent has increased over the last 11 years. We've increased our rents by 28% as compared to the market, which has increased by 67%, which is the blue box. But if you have a look at the CPI, which is the bottom line, the yellow one, 39, so CPI has increased by 40%. So the council is 11% below CPI. So we've not kept up with our costs. And so, again, if you have a look, the 184 is an assessment based on the June actual, because we get those figures the following year. The final slide is showing the reserve balance. We're currently at just shy of 40 million, a £39 million reserve. That increases over the first 10, 11 years, mainly because of the CPI plus 1% on rents. And then because we align and we have assumed that the rent increase will be CPI plus 0.5% from year 11, and we're investing in 100 homes on average, that reserve then depletes over that time. The rent convergence, which was the final recommendation that we're seeking approval for, rent convergence essentially means that during the last few years, especially during COVID, when rents were capped, CPI was 11-12%, we capped rents at 7%. Government recognises the difficulty that the HRAs are facing, and they have just recently consulted on all of those individuals who benefited from that cap, because all new tenants are pay rent at the sort of like the uncapped increase. If that's done over 3 years at £2 a week, and we're not going to know that until the announcement, it means that when we are fully converged, the council will benefit by £2.7 million additional revenue. We haven't factored that into the business plan, but what that will demonstrates is that we could, in effect, increase our acquisitions, new build, for example, to 20 million, or choose an alternative route. But it's a significant sum, has significant implications over the 30 years. And that's based on, the additional 20 homes is based on the fact that we would need 40% external funding. And if we use that 2.7 to borrow, then we could achieve significantly more. Thank you, Chair.
Before I open it up, I've probably got 2 or 3 dumb questions, but I'll ask them anyway. Derby Homes have a contract till 2032, but does this sort of lock in the Almo for a longer period of time?
No, Chair. The agreement, you're right, is till 2032, but the HRA business plan is approved annually and is revised annually. So the management fee that's been set is set for 1 year, and it will be revised when we have confirmation of inflationary changes, pay increase and so forth. So management fee changes along with the maintenance fee annually.
Then following on with probably another silly question, but how does LGR potentially affect the business plan? Because again, it seems to me that we may be focusing on Derby city footprint, and yet potentially 2 years' time we'll have a much bigger local authority. Are we still going to be focusing on the city boundary footprint? How is that going to work in terms of this business plan? Because it's such a long-term plan. Obviously, you know, things are going to change significantly and we'll have a much larger footprint. So I'm just curious as to how that's going to work.
Thank you. Because the plan is revised annually, so yes, we've done a 30-year business plan. We know we've got 12,500 stock at the moment. We are aware that LGR is going to happen. We think we have a preferred boundary line. Within that boundary line, the biggest other provider who has a HRA is South Derbyshire, and their stock is 3,000. So we are by far the larger partner if that happens. But we will be refreshing the business plan next year, and we will account for the change in the boundary in the next plan.
So there is the ability to change, to adapt.
Absolutely, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask about the figures you had earlier, which are repeated in paragraph 4.16.11, regarding the numbers of new homes on the capital side of things. This coming year, there's an expectation of 88 new properties, which is less than the 100 and the 100 expected for 27-28 and 28-29. But the new homes and acquisitions funding is higher for 26-27 and then drops 27, 28, and even lower at 28, 29. That just seems surprising to me, unless we're only going to be getting smaller and smaller houses into the future.
Chair, the cost that we incur in year is not reflected in the number of units that we actually deliver annually. So essentially, we've got a number of new build and acquisitions program that's planned for the next 30 years, but the expenditure doesn't align with the numbers. So, for example, we may start 100 homes, we won't necessarily finish 100 the following year. They'll go over a number of years. All programs are 2, 3, 4 years, and that's why the expenditure doesn't actually align with the numbers. But also, there's an inflationary impact as to how we've assumed inflation in future years, and that has an impact on the cost side of it.
Councillor Kerr?
I'm not sure that given that inflation should make the numbers get bigger, and when we're in the steady state of 100 per year, I'd expect it to be the same, sort of rolling forward. It doesn't quite, I don't quite understand that.
I'll try again. I apologise for not.
But I just wondered whether there's, if we were paying back a loan, for example, and we knew that we were having to pay back a loan in the coming year for houses in the past, that would make sense. Or if we know that we've got to purchase some land and therefore there's going to be some other costs for this coming year, that would make sense as well. But I can't see that in this very high level report.
Okay, thank you. I suppose I'll try to explain it again. So what I'm saying is that the actual cost is based on a program of new builds, and that doesn't necessarily reflect, I suppose is what you're saying, the number of delivery. But the reason for that is that we won't spend equally across each year on delivery, because the profile of spend in each of the 3-year program will be different. You might have a spade in the ground and only spend 10% in year 1 and majority in year 2 and next to nothing in year 3, but the delivery will be in year 3. So they don't align in terms of delivery and starts.
Is it in practical terms, if you take a development, if it's a fairly large development, it may be phased, and it depends on where the social housing is going, or the affordable housing, social housing is going to be, as to when that would be built. Is that a kind of a practical example of how it might be phased over maybe 2 or 3 years?
That's accurate. So they are phased over 2-3 years, but also the spend profile isn't. The delivery isn't always in the year that you incur the cost. So we won't get a key until all of the certificates have been completed, and that might be in a future year. So the delivery doesn't align with the cost incurred. Because you could build a house, but we won't take delivery of it until all of the building regulations, all the certificates and everything else has been signed off.
Councillor Kerr?
But in the table, we're talking about the current year, 107 dwellings, next year, 88 dwellings, and then we go into our ideal target of 100. So I agree it's a summarised sort of situation, but as a steady state, 100 a year, and actually seeing that the new homes and acquisitions cost is falling, just seems unexpected. Unless there is something else happening in the background that I can't see.
The other variable within that is the size of the home. So depending on number of bedrooms, again, the cost varies also. So I can get you the detail if that's okay, and we can go through it if you'd like. Do that.
Councillor Wright.
Yeah, my question aligns with the question that you asked, Chair. In 4.10, it said that we've got 4.6% of our properties below the formula rent. I assume that other authorities that we may join with over the next couple of years, their difference will vary. So I've got two questions really. Why aren't we at the government's set formula rent in the first instance? And secondly, is the process of alignment, once we are amalgamated, is that going to cause issues for us in terms of potentially having a big jump if other authorities and the decisions are made to align to the government formula rent? You know, are we aware of those issues, and are they likely to be a significant cost to our council, taxpayers?
No, we are aware, Chair, but until we know the boundary and we know who we're going to be working with, which other local authorities will join, their rent increases or caps would be different to us. So until we know who our partners will be, we can't really make a decision as to how it will impact or how we deal with our tenants. In terms of why we're not aligned, simply because inflation was 12% at one point. The government placed a cap of 7%, so everybody who's an existing tenant is only paying 7%. Anybody new is paying the 12%, so that's why they're misaligned. And the rent conversions will bring them together.
Right, I get it now. And I take it that's for every authority in the country?
The cap was for every authority, but they wouldn't necessarily have capped their rents at that level. They might have done a lower rent increase because 7% was the cap, but it was up to the council what they want to increase it. So it could be more or less.
Thank you very much. Are there any... Oh, Councillor Russell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to expand on that point a little bit. When we've discussed this in the past, we have been concerned about what's effectively a black hole in the HRA that's caused by the cap on increases in rent in the past. So I wonder if you could just say perhaps a bit more about how that's developed and how we're going to see it evolve going forward. Looking at the graph, it looks like we're still going to have a big drop off in the reserve balance over the longer period, but we're managing to build some new council homes as part of that process, which is obviously good. But are there any ways in which you can see that we can maintain the level of reserves going forward and or building more properties as well at the same time? Are there any discussions going on within the housing sector in terms of addressing that?
Thank you, Chair. How long have I got? Because I could talk forever from that aspect of it. So essentially, the reason we had a big hole is essentially when we went with the self-financing, or the government did the self-financing in 2012, they made assumptions in terms of how rents would increase, and they would increase with in line with inflation. They didn't over a four-year period from 2016 to 2020. There was a rent reduction of 1% annually for those 4 years. In real terms, what that meant was inflation was increasing, we were cutting rents. There was nearly just under 14% differential between at that period, and the convergence is not going to cover that. The convergence is about the caps. Again, during COVID, there were cap between the 11.1, I think, or 12% and the 7%. There's a differential about 4% on that. So we were, the HRA was losing income because of those policies. Aligned to that, because inflation was so high, the cost of development was increasing, the cost of managing and maintaining the homes was increasing, and on top of that we've got the government placing more burdens on councils and social housing in terms of the consumer standards, in terms of the net zero impact, all significant. So the sector is discussing all of these issues. We are working with LGR, we're working with representative groups, council with Alamo Groups, National Federation of Associations, with the LGA, with other consultants like Savills, to work with the government in producing or reviewing all of these pressures. And some of the reforms that are helping include the right to buy reform, where the government has placed a cap on the discounts that tenants receive on right to buys. Not only were we losing a house, but there was a significant, Derby was losing proportionally the highest amount of homes through right to buy than anybody else in the country. We were losing about 175 on average a few years back. Our average discount last couple of years has been about £65,000. Our average disposal was £145,000. So a £145,000 house was being sold £65,000 less. So about 80,000. And not only that, a huge chunk of that was going towards paying the debt off that the government passed over through the resettlement. A lot's happening, and there's significant going on at the moment.
We'll perhaps look forward to some further updates then on that and going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more questions? Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Good presentation. Thank you. Okay, what are we up to? We're up to item 13, which is contract and financial procedure matters. Pete, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this Financial Matters report outlines 4 main items for consideration. Item 1 is the acceptance of the bus grant award from East Midlands Combined Authority, or EMCA, of £568,000. This funding is revenue allocation for the Bus Service Improvement Plan, or BSIP. There is no requirement to bid for this funding. The funding will be spent on bus service improvements in line with the BSIP Enhanced Partnership Plan, which was approved by Cabinet on the 16th of November 2022. The MOU states that the funding should be used by March 2026. However, funding may be carried forward into 26-27, subject to approval. Item 2 is the addition of a new scheme to the Housing General Fund Capital Programme of £24,000. Due to the condition of the existing roof of a privately owned terraced property, water and pigeon ingress has occurred, resulting in damp penetration in adjacent properties, causing a statutory nuisance. An abatement notice was issued and an emergency roof repair completed. An abatement notice, put simply, is a formal legal order from a local authority served on someone causing a statutory nuisance. Although the repair has been completed, it was a temporary repair, and the roof has continued to deteriorate, allowing water and pigeon ingress again. Therefore, this scheme needs to be added to the programme to commence a roof replacement and essential associated works. There is a scheduled confidential paper on the agenda for further discussion on this item, with an officer from the service here to present. Item 3 is to award of a contract to an external service provider for the continued provision of maintenance of the hydroelectric plant at Longbridge Weir Hydro Powerhouse. This contract has been procured twice via in-feet notice, now replaced by transparency notice under the Procurement Act 2023 since 2021. The Council have received no challenges to this. Prior to this, it was last tendered in 2017 when only 2 bids were received, and the one not from the incumbent supplier was significantly higher in price. The likely reasons for this are there are a limited number of contractors in this highly specialised field, then the majority are unable to cost-effectively provide the 24-hour emergency backup which the plant requires. Derwent Hydroelectric Power Limited have originally constructed the plant, are very familiar with its construction, which puts off other contractors, and the scale of the operation in reality is very small, meaning other contractors consider it a high risk. The final item is the acceptance of 5 million from MCA Investment Fund for 2 Derby City Council enabling sites. The Marketplace up to 3 million and Beckett Well up to 2 million, and associated delegations to enter into the necessary grant agreements. Officers and partners have been working with MCA to provide details of the proposals. Beckett Well site enabling works package is designed to pump prime a significant DCC-owned development site known historically as Duckworth Square in Derby City Centre. The site is a significant site above abnormal costs, which this project will address by their removal to deliver a more viable site, increasing the prospects of developing the site in future. The Marketplace Enabling Works package will involve clearing the development site and implementing an early phase marketplace public realm enhancement, all aimed at assisting development, promotion and investment in the Marketplace regeneration scheme. A Cabinet report summarising the financial implications of both schemes, along with a request for approval to add these to the capital programme for the relevant years, will be prepared for consideration in early 2026.
Thank you. Can I fire off a first question about the hydro plant, hydropower, non-Bridge Weir? I understand I was around at the time as to what the purpose was, and in the main part, I think it's actually, delivered. Check and balance on it. It may be that you can't answer this, but I suppose how do I ask this? Is the investment worth it? Is it still washing its own face? Is it still providing power to the council house in the way that offers value? We aren't just sort of offering a service contract on something which isn't going to actually deliver value for taxpayers. Is that quite a difficult question to answer in terms of your position, or?
In summary, yes, it is. But what I can do, of course, is take that back and get you an answer to that. But obviously the site is operating and it's still generating power for the council house. So, but yeah, I can take that back.
It would be interesting to know because, like I say, it's the intended purpose of it. I think has delivered really well. But obviously, it would be interesting to just see 14 years on what the future holds for it, and if it's currently obviously providing the same kind of benefit that we envisioned a decade and a half ago. Right, Councillor Wright.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I first say thank you, Pete, for answering the couple of questions prior to that, prior to this meeting. My query is around the MCA Investment Committee, and I understand your response that this is only a high-level expression of interest. My concern, though, is the report states that the engagement to date has just been with senior DCC officers, which I understand in terms of early development. But in terms of investment for Derby, there are a whole host of other priorities, not just Beckett Well and the Marketplace. I can think of a whole host of others. And my question is, why has there been no democratic involvement in the process to date? I know you might not be the right person to answer that question, but for me, it's often in these early stages when assumptions are made about what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. It's exactly the time that before any firm decisions are made. So that's my question. If it hasn't taken place, a comment to Cabinet ought to be that there ought to be democratic oversight and scrutiny at the early stages.
It can be hard for officers to obviously answer directly those kind of questions. Obviously, the Cabinet member would be far better placed for that. But if you want to make a comment, Pete.
Yeah, so I did have a quick update before I came to the meeting. Member involvement, the relevant Cabinet member and wider Cabinet member were consulted on the proposal submitted by Derby City Council. An update on MCA and Derby's emerging priorities for investment is on the agenda for the Regeneration and Housing Scrutiny Board next week.
Yeah, that answers it, thank you.
There you go. Good stuff. Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Chair. And again, Pete, this might not be a question directly for yourself, but if you'll be able to take it back if it's not for you, that would be great. Just around the acceptance of the bus grant awards, we're mentioning in this that the funding that we've got is going to be spent in line with the BSIP Enhanced Partnership Plan. If I remember quietly, that's quite a big plan. Do we know specifically what the money's been allocated to and what it's either going to be spent on or has been spent on? Because I know we got awarded, I think it was £943,000 in October last year to upgrade some bus stops. And when I sent some queries off around whether any in my ward were down to be improved, the answer was sort of that at the time we didn't know. And of course, with the transfer over to EMCA of some of the powers, whether it would be us that was even determining that. So do we know what this has been spent on so far?
Well, the short answer is no, I don't. But again, I'll take that query back and get you an answer.
Yeah, no, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr, can I guess that it's about the bus funding? Am I wrong?
Well, there was a report, a mention in a briefing before Christmas to ourselves as councillors, and it gave a link to a press release which talked about 40 bus stops. And I've asked a question to the system as to which 40 bus stops, or, you know, are we allowed to suggest bus stops still? And I don't know what the answer is, so, you know, we don't know. But my feedback was actually going to be on the hydro plant, because I had a meeting with the officer who oversees the turbine, and a few weeks ago before Christmas, and he said that the original cost was £1.5 million, but obviously there's mortgage type costs on the borrowing costs on top of that, and it's bringing in the order of 100,000 per annum, which sounds to me like quite a nice investment, and it should improve the work they're doing on it. It should get it up by possibly around 20%, 30% on top of what it's doing at the moment. Some of that is feed-in tariff refunding to pay for the capital costs, so that'll pay for the capital costs, and then the ongoing benefit will be there with the maintenance costs, of course. In terms of the democratic involvement, there's also a reference on Let's Talk Derby about publicity this Saturday in Derbyan about the public realm. Now, I don't know whether I think it's been run by the university, but I don't know if that's going to include the marketplace and Beckett Well, but it would be interested. Again, I've asked for more information on that one because I couldn't find out enough. But otherwise, Chair, I didn't have any comments. No, it's been covered. Thank you.
I think there was some specific consultation on the marketplace. Was it in December? Yeah. Okay.
You might be ongoing.
I'm sure it will. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of discussion about it. I've said it before. I mean, it is in my opinion, the most important regeneration site in the city now. We have to get it right, and obviously, I'm sure there's going to be lots of discussion on how we move that forward across OS and planning as well. Okay, are there any more questions, comments, queries? No? Okay, well, we'll move on then. I will say it this time. Exclusion of the press and public. So to consider a resolution to exclude the press and public during consideration of the following items, that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during discussion of the following items on the grounds that they involve likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 and 3, part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Thank you.